and welcome to Voices Unhindered. I'm Kristal Jenkinson. On this show, I give a unique perspective and listening ear to voices that often go unheard. I want everyone to know that you are not alone and that your voice and story matter. This week, I speak about overcoming guilt and shame as a sole parent, whether it's a deep-rooted shame from childhood trauma, a false sense of guilt, or feelings of overwhelming guilt. Send this episode to someone you know who is a sole parent. The topic I am speaking to you guys about today is breaking free from guilt and shame as a solo parent. So this episode is for my solo parents. I wanted to go into the definition of what a solo parent is. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about what a solo parent is versus what a single parent is. And even I didn't know some of this, but I just knew there was differences. So I was raised by a solo dad. He didn't have any help from my biological mother. He raised us by himself financially. He had a lot of help from my grandparents. Most of my life was spent with my grandparents, actually. And so all my care and nurturing, a lot of that love came from them. That's what a solo parent is, when you don't have any support from the other parent at all. And it usually involves a grievance that happened. So it could be that they died. It could be that they were imprisoned. It could be that they so mentally unwell. Saying this respectfully, they can't look after themselves, let alone children. They are too immature to be a parent, just addicted to drugs or something like that causes them to not be a good parent. And sadly, that's the case where sometimes a parent has to raise a child on their own without any help from the other parent. And that's what I am as well. And I don't like to stigmatize myself into that box. Yeah, I also think I acknowledge and I give credit to the solo parents, because it's different to being a single parent where you co-parent with the other parent. I'll just go into the definitions of what the difference is and what a solo parent is. So a solo parent is someone who raises their children alone with no co-parent, whereas single parents share in a child's care with another parent. A solo parent is totally responsible for the child with no involvement from the other parent. They have full custody of the child, and they're the sole provider financially for the child. A solo parent often needs to find alternative support systems, whether it's like a church, whether it's a community of other solo parents or others who are walking the same path as you, whatever works for you. It isn't easy to find that, and I've found a community in my church, but not everyone obviously is a Christian or everyone believes in God or finds comfort in that or support, but I have in my specific church. A solo parent often experiences a greater sense of stigma than single parents, whereas single parents, they have grace because, that divorce is quite common nowadays, so co-parenting is quite common, so single parents are common nowadays. Whereas a solo parent, it has a deeper sense of stigma attached to it, and I don't know why, but even growing up, I felt a bit ashamed of being, living with a solo dad, because people would be like, "Where's your mom?" Or they just wonder, who she was, or the fact that my dad took us up north was to get away from the influence of her, just, in case she turned up drunk at school or did something like that. Just the unpredictable behavior that she exhibited was not healthy for a child growing up. And what I wanted to say was there's a deeper sense of stigma. So being a solo parent, you feel like you're carrying a lot more responsibility because you are than a single parent. You have to provide solely for this child everything they need. And often you're faced with criticism or blame, or people might think, oh, what happened to the other parent? Or like I said, when I was young, people might ask, where's my mom? Or what did she look like? Or whatever. Was she involved in my life and things like that? So often there's something that happened. It could be due to abandonment, which that's a stigma in itself. It's like if the parent just left you with the kids and they abandoned their kids because they weren't interested, or they, that just shows a lack of character for one, and responsibility, and they're not grown in themselves to raise a child, so they just abandon It's due to their own childhood trauma that someone abandons their children. And that is the case for some solo parents, and that carries a stigma because it's like, well, that's not something that you're proud of that happened, and it makes you feel like it was your fault. That's why the parent left the kids, and the kids feel like it was their fault that parent left them, and that is not the case. And I just wanted to talk about it could be a loss. They could have died, and that is another stigma, like being a widow or having had to grieve for your partner, and then feeling the guilt of, did I do enough? Was it my fault? Things like that, because there's guilt that comes with that grief as well, and they're connected. And then it could be that the partner was imprisoned or the other parent was imprisoned. That's why you're a solo parent. So there's different things that could cause someone to be a solo parent. And like I said, my biological dad, he was a solo parent, and so am I. So I also think there's an element of spiritual, I wouldn't say like it's a curse, but I'd say like there's a higher tendency, like if you were raised by a solo parent, there's something there that can create a pattern in bloodlines, like we see it with like alcohol or something like that. If they were addicted to alcohol, your parents, like sometimes they say, the children have a higher tendency to be alcoholics. But actually you can revert to one way or the other sometimes. And I don't think it's just a gene thing, but I wanted to say that you can break that cycle. You don't have to know, like you can grow up raising your child as a solo parent, knowing they're not going to be a solo parent. They're not going to struggle like you did to break those curses or those generational cycles because you did it for them. And I think there's a lot of pride in that by being a solo parent. It's like, no, protecting your kids from that dysfunction that you grew up, that you saw your solo parent struggle. You felt their emotions. You carried responsibilities as a child that you were never meant to carry. And that can create such a maturity, depth, and empathy as a child. And it's a beautiful thing to have that as a child. And then, so my daughter, she has those traits of being independent. She's very empathetic. She's very caring and motherly. Yeah, I mean, I don't take all the credit, but I did raise her on my own with God's help. So they can have traits that those with two parents or two parents that are not, as focused or as intentional about their lives, they can do better than other kids at school. Don't just look and think, oh, my kid's going to be a statistic. Like solo parents raise kids that aren't as smart or whatever. That's all like, that's a statistic. You don't want to be that. And I just want you to think like that. Like, you don't know who you're raising. You could be raising someone that changes the world. And for me as a Christian, like, I want my daughter to know God. I want my daughter to know Jesus. Like, she's confident in who she is. And I think looking at those things that you've done and how you've raised your kids, that's something to be so proud of. Maybe proud's the wrong word. Like, so pleased with yourself and celebrate those victories that you have. And that you see the qualities in your child that you have brought out through your parenting. I just wanted to go over the definition of guilt. Okay, the definition of guilt is the emotional experience of feeling remorse or responsibility for committing an offense or violating a moral standard. So that's the definition of guilt. And the definition of a false sense of guilt, which is the same, but it carries it arises from misplaced responsibility or cognitive distortions. So it means you're feeling guilty for something outside of your control that you didn't do, or something that you didn't violate, like your conscience, you didn't violate that, or your values. And it's usually rooted in childhood issues by how you were treated or how you saw those caregivers or your parents, how they behaved towards you. Maybe you were blamed for things that you didn't do, or you were left with all those responsibilities. You were left to do the dishes or something at a really young age, or your parents couldn't look after you because they were addicted to drugs and you had to get your own food or something like that. And you can grow up, like I said in the previous episodes, that you can grow up with hyper independence, and you can grow up struggling to set boundaries with people because you didn't know how to do that. You weren't taught that as a child. You didn't have those boundaries. You can grow up to be a perfectionist, neglecting self-care, being easily manipulated by others' emotions, pain, words, or reaction. And then you can just not feel good enough, no matter what you do, because you always remember those words inside your head, like your parents telling you, like, you never did this, or you never do that, or you need to do that. Or if you hear those things in your head, that means that that's where it comes from, childhood. And it becomes like a stronghold. Like a stronghold is like a set of lies of beliefs that become true because you've believed a lie in your mind, and that becomes your reality. I just wanted to share something that I remember that I grew up with this. So there was a time when my biological mother was in and out of the house. She didn't know anything about being, how to be a mother or anything. You know how kids play in the lounge. Me and my little brother were playing, and he fell off when we were walking around on furniture, as kids do, have accidents, and he started crying. And then I just remember her running down and smacking me. And this was for no reason. And I told her, I was only like 3 or 4, and I told her after, after I stopped crying, isn't it better if you find out what happened before you just run down and blame me? And then she's like, yeah, maybe I should do that. But yeah, that's all to do with drugs and mental issues. But anyways, she wasn't around for long, but she was in and out, doing her thing. That's kind of what I mean by I grew up with this false sense of guilt. Like, oh, it's my fault. Like, even though I didn't even do anything. And that's what I was treated like. So that can all come back to childhood. So shame is an internalization of this guilt. So instead of guilt is saying, I did this bad thing, or this bad thing happened to me, so I feel guilty. It might not even be your fault. It might be, like I said, it could be a guilt, or it could be a false sense of guilt. So like if you were sexually abused as a child, it wasn't your fault, but you have this false sense of guilt that it must have been your fault, that you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, or somehow you were dressed the wrong way, or you encouraged it. Maybe people around you even said that, and that's a false sense of guilt. That's not your fault, but that was passed on to you. So an internalization of guilt is what shame is. It's where you think something is wrong about you. So you think it's the next level. It's like a deeper level of guilt. It's like, this happened to me, so I must be bad. And it's actually a shift in your identity. It's like, no, not separating what happened to you from who you are. It's like saying, no, this is who I am. This sexual abuse, this violence, whatever, is part of who I am, because I'm a bad person. That's why it must have happened to me. And this is the number one way that we have, as Christians, we know that we have an enemy called the devil, and he attacks those with the calling of God on their life. Is the main way he uses it is he tries to get in below the age of 5 often, because that's when a lot of demonic stuff tries to come in. It's when you're most vulnerable. And there's even a teacher called Derek Prince. He's a Christian teacher and a pioneer. He's passed on now, but he's a solid Bible teacher, and he's a deliverance minister as well. He was, and then he talks about like the main way that age that many demons come in is before the age of 5, and a lot of it is, it's all the parents' fault, because they have opened the doors to let these demons in. Kids can't protect themselves. Yeah, so back to what I was saying, is like he sees the calling of God on your life, and he tries to get in at such a young age. He wants you to run and hide like Adam and Eve did in the Garden of Eden when they sinned in Genesis 3. They immediately, when they sinned, felt shame and guilt. This was a sense of guilt and shame that was real. It wasn't like a false sense. Like they knew they'd done something wrong. And I just wanted to mention that a single parent is someone who raises a child without a live-in partner or co-parent. They're divorced, separated, shared custody, shared financial responsibilities. So that's a big difference between the two, solo and single. I just wanted to go through some points to my solo parents of the causes of guilt and advisable solutions. So, things that you can do to stop feeling guilty and start feeling the opposite. Like, start feeling like you're pleased, like you're breaking cycles, you're a chain breaker in your bloodline. Like, there's something different about the way you're parenting your child than what you grew up with. Now, I just wanted to go through the points. So the first one is feeling inadequate, like you aren't good enough, you don't measure up to what you think a parent should be, or what others think a parent should be, or what others think you should be doing. And this is like really this is more extreme for solo parents, I believe. I've never been a parent that's married or had anyone to help me with my daughter. So I don't know what it's like to be like that, but when you feel like you're not good enough, the devil can really hound you with that as a solo parent. He'll be like, oh, you're not doing this or that, or you don't give them what other kids get, or there's a lot of financial pressure as a solo parent. Like you want to entertain your kids, you want to take them out places. You obviously, if you have a car, that costs money, and you're doing it all on your own. There's only one person getting the money. Obviously, in New Zealand, we have the sole parent benefit, so that supports parents, but that is just enough to live on. It's not like you can save money on that or like build a future or save for a house or anything like that. So it's just enough like food to pay the rent, wherever you're living and things like that. So to get off that, there's a bit of incentive, but it's not easy. So obviously there's an incentive to study when your kids are young, because a lot of the childcare is funded and like uni courses and things like that during uni courses and study. But then obviously finding a job is another challenge, because I did a journalism degree, and I honestly, there's not really that many jobs in journalism today. Surprise. And so I just thought I'd start my own podcast. That's one example of how you can take how you can be pleased with yourself, like just making little steps towards what you want your future to look like for you and your children. I am definitely not there, but I'm just, I'm taking one step at a time, feeling led by God to do this podcast. That's a big one. So when you feel financially pressured, especially as a man, I think it's harder because, the man's supposed to be the provider, and you don't have much money. It can feel really embarrassing, or you feel like you're not what society thinks you should be as a man. Not that I'm a man, but I saw my dad go through this. Like, he has a good job and a good degree, but he struggled financially, struggled to manage money and things like that. And I think that's so important for parents to have wisdom on how to manage their money. So I got taught a lot of this by my granddad, but I also wasted a lot growing up, wasted a lot of money. He taught me how to save and things like that. But yeah, and be resourceful. Maybe your living environment maybe you have to live with others, or maybe you're on your own, which is a blessing for me because I live on my own in a social housing block. Maybe the environment is not that great, like where you live, because sometimes you have limited choices. You know how that saying is like beggars can't be choosers? Not that we're beggars, but like, yeah, I mean, like anywhere to live is better than nowhere, right? And like, for example, when I moved into my housing block, there was a couple downstairs that moved in. They just got moved there. And then they were fighting and threatening to kill each other outside my door all hours of the night, waking my daughter up, disturbing us. She'd get frights and think it sounded like a scary movie. Not that we watch scary movies, but yeah, so I recorded all these fights and I kept pushing the complaints to the manager, and she took it to the court and we got them moved. So that's something that I am pleased with in myself. Like, I could not handle that. Like, this was not a good environment for me and my daughter to be in when they were living there. The whole atmosphere changed. You could feel it in the whole block. And I'm so pleased that we have a good manager, and she listened to the evidence was strong enough. And I was just really pushing for that because I'm like, no, it's not good enough. And these are things that you can do to protect you and your child, and that you have a responsibility to do. So I wanted to say that things that made me feel inadequate. So Women's Refuge, I went there when my grandma was passing with cancer back in 2020. Yeah, for like a few days. I didn't actually even stay there for one night. My daughter peed on the mattress, and we just left because it was not the environment that I wanted her to be around. And there was the smell of weed where I was living, and the girls were just really quite, I don't want to say man haters, but like, a lot of them had been there because they've been beaten by men. I was there because I wanted to put my name on the social housing register, and I literally had nowhere else to go after my grandparents had passed. So that's what I did. 3 months later, God gave me a house, and that was a blessing. So I went back to my granddad after that because I was like, this is not a good environment. So these are little decisions that God will guide you in. I felt like when my daughter peed on the mattress, I was like, no, God doesn't want me here. I also stayed with someone from church for 2 weeks, just getting headspace while my grandma was suffering with cancer at home. So I found it extremely hard to be around her, as well as looking after my daughter while grieving and watching her pass away. So, and she was 1 at the time, and I just come back with all the lockdowns from India. That's another story. Like, I cut contact with my daughter's biological dad as well, due to him just not being a good influence for her or me. You live in a social housing block as a solo parent, and if you do, that can make you feel like, I remember someone walking past and being like, all these people that live here are poor. I don't think of myself like that. Like, people put you into a box based on a lot of things, and living there is one of them. Is there drugs or violence around where you where you are with your kids? This can make you feel inadequate because if you don't do anything about it, to get your kids away from that, or put up boundaries, or with family members or people that are bringing in drugs or violence or chaos into your home, you will feel inadequate. You will feel guilty. And this is a real sense of guilt because it's like you are responsible for your child's environment. You're responsible for their well-being. Just you, no one else. So, yeah, you got to be determined as a solo parent. Like, you got to have that drive. Like, whatever it takes, I'm going to make the best decisions for me and my child or children. It's almost like it's you against the world. And it's not just you, though. When you believe in Jesus, it's you and Jesus against the world. And that's a majority. Like, it doesn't matter what people think about you. It doesn't matter what boxes they try to put you in. The only person that's limiting you is your own beliefs about you. And that's what I've realized too. So the solution to feeling inadequate and like you aren't good enough is to work, like I just mentioned, working towards building a better life where you can one day get off the sole parent benefit. Even just working on yourself internally, like reflecting, journaling, going to a faith community, even just having a faith in God can encourage you. Like, if you believe in a higher power, if you believe you're here for a purpose, like being a solo parent, it's a purpose. Like, there's a strong purpose and a strong calling in that. Like, I'm not saying you should go out and, I told you the circumstances for why someone's a solo parent. It's not cut and dry. There's a lot of things surrounding why someone is that. And then a lot of different reasons why. I really wanted a family, and I rushed into this relationship, and I felt sorry for my daughter's biological dad. He had all these problems. He was going to be deported from New Zealand. I thought I could help him. I helped him get a divorce, like that false sense of responsibility I had for him. He wasn't my problem. He wasn't my son. But that's what I felt like he was. So I was like, nah, I'm better off without that, So, like I said, like, even just being creative, like if you're good at knitting, if you're good at making things, like make things and start selling them, like just building different streams of ways to make money and build, and use this time that you have when your kids are at school to work on these things. Maybe you could do a business course with Te Wānanga or Aotearoa. I did that, and it was last year. That was really helpful, like getting me used to what a business is. And, it actually helped progress my podcast. Like, a lot of the work I did it's real practical. It works on your business. It's not just and it's free as well. And I have a journalism degree at uni. I did that during the COVID era. So, yeah, just learn all you can and grow all you can. To me, the church community has been a big, it's been something that I enjoy being a part of now. I stepped away from my faith just after losing my grandparents because I was just in such a bad state. I was just trying to survive. And just remember how God's provided for you and favored you. 3 months after I went to the women's refuge, I had a house. I never thought that it would happen so fast, and I never thought I'd be able to live on my own with my daughter. Like, I thought, I'd have to stay. I didn't actually have anywhere to stay. So there was no other option for me. And God provided. And just being grateful for that. Like, he sees you and he loves you, especially as a solo parent. You're special to him. Like, he sees how you're struggling. He sees how you're trying to break cycles. He sees how you're depending on him, and he loves that. And it's not in vain, like, what you're doing. You don't have any idea who your child will become one day. Number 2 is unhealed and unresolved past traumas. This can be a cause for guilt. So this usually comes from, it could come from childhood usually, or relationships, past relationships, where there were grievances in those relationships, or where there was abuse. It could be violence, it could be sexual abuse. And your children, they're so sensitive to your pain. When I was really young, and my daughter knew that I was grieving, but I wasn't, like, she just knew. And I think even how she breastfed so long, like 5.5 years, like, I think that was a comfort to her. She knew that we both needed that, bonding, and we're real close now. So they know exactly what you're feeling. They know things in the womb, even, like I've mentioned in my other episodes. And the baggage you're carrying, if you don't heal and remove that guilt in your life, if you don't heal from past traumas, your children are going to grow up feeling guilty for something they didn't do. Just how you grew up with a false sense of guilt, they're going to grow up with that if you do not heal from your past traumas. So, like, when I was little, for example, I couldn't even speak properly. I remember this. I remember going into my dad's office, and I knew he was, like, kind of bent over, and I just sensed that he was deeply depressed from being in the relationship he was, the toxic, with the mess he was in with my biological mother. He was, in a really bad state. He got quite unwell at times, where he even passed out once, and my aunt found him. Yeah, super stressed. And I witnessed all this as a child, and I felt like I was there to comfort him. And I used to say, "Doing, Daddy," like that was how I spoke. I couldn't even speak properly, and I knew something was wrong with him. I didn't know what else to say. But I just go up to him and say that. And I felt like when he spoke to me, he was very nice, but I knew that he was seriously mentally unwell. And I felt like it was my fault. I felt like I was the caregiver. I know that sounds weird, but that's what happens to you when you grow up with dysfunction, violence, toxic environments, parents that are fighting all the time. So I had a great empathy and maturity from a young age, and independence. And I saw things differently than a lot of kids my age saw. So I tried to comfort him. I couldn't even talk properly. Not having a mother in my life meant I didn't have any idea how to be a mother when I hadn't been mothered, except for with my grandma, but not my biological mother. My grandma was dying when soon after my daughter turned 1. So just after her birthday, months later, she passed. So this is what made me feel traumatized and grieved, and just such a mixture of emotions I had in those early years of my daughter's life. And I don't even know how I got through it. It was God, obviously, but it was all like a blur to me now. But I just wanted to say that if you don't heal, your kids are gonna carry everything that you carried. I was just in survival mode for so long, and this caused me to have like a false sense of guilt. Like, I was like, I'm not really living I'm not relaxed. I'm not happy. I'm just trying to get through all this grief. There was just one thing after another. My grandma died. My granddad died years later. I cut off my biological daughter's dad. Even though he was abusive, there's still a grief. Like, you're grieving what you wish you had with them. Like, you're grieving the little happy family picture in your head that you realize isn't actually true. and you were just imagining it, and they actually can't be what you thought they were. Yeah, like I mentioned, Derek Prince, a Bible teacher, he's passed now and a pioneer, he said that most demons enter a child before the age of 5, enter somebody. So my own experience, I had a spirit of anger and perversion because of violence and sexual abuse I witnessed and experienced from a young age. So the solution to unhealed past trauma is to give grace to yourself. Like, the things you've been through, they're not your fault. You had to walk through the valley, but God was with you. When you give those grievances, those things to Him, He can heal you. So you have to do the work and He helps you. So the inner work on your inner child, so you could go to therapy, counseling. Journaling is helpful for some people. I don't mean like writing a diary. I mean like writing down your feelings, your thoughts, your desires, just even little victories that you've had, things you're grateful for. I think being thankful is really powerful. Self-reflection, which is kind of similar, but it's more like that happens also in therapy and counseling, but you can do it by yourself as well. Just writing poems or writing a book or anything like that. Reading books on, how to move into healing. It could be Bible-based books. It could be psychology books, Christian psychology. There's different types, like Dr. Caroline Leaf and things like that. She talks about the brain and how to rewire your brain. And then Bible study, prayer, which is something that also, speaking in tongues, there's evidence that it can calm a person down, and it can it turns on this different state in your brain where it's like it's online, but it's like it's powerful praying in tongues because we don't know what we're saying, but we are praying to God, and that's what tongues is. It's like a different language. So this all increases the vagus nerve, and that's the role in healing from past trauma as well, which is also the vagus nerve is also strengthened by singing, deep breathing, walking in nature, and even a little bit of exercise. And the sunshine is really good for everything. And just wanted to say that one healed parent is better than 2 broken, dysfunctional, messed up parents. You are more than capable, and God entrusted this child to you into your care. So if you have the full custody, if you have the full right legally over this child is your child that God's given to you. It's His child that He's entrusted to you to care for. It's almost like He owns the child, but we manage the child. It's kind of like that. Like we're responsible for everything of the child's well-being and welfare, but He gave us that responsibility. That child comes from Him that you're raising. And that's how you should see being a solo parent. You're raising God's kid. I just wanted to say that my daughter knowing God as her father, her heavenly father, is so much more important to me than her knowing her biological father. Like, yeah, she can know him if she wants one day. I'm not going to stop her, but just as long as she knows who her heavenly father is, to me, that is most important as her mother. And that's my job, to let her know who He is and encourage that through not just going to church, but living for God myself, and having a connection and relationship with God myself. It says in the Bible in Psalms 147:3, He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. So yeah, oftentimes when you're a solo parent, you come away, or you come out of that, you come into that label with a broken heart, and God can heal your heart. There's different things that a solo parent faces that other parents don't face. Different struggles, different challenges. Oftentimes there's more generational trauma. There's generational curses in the bloodline. There's open doors to demons and things that a solo parent has to face. And when you really love your child, you're going to face all these demons on behalf of your child and shut the door to them. That's because that's what loving your child is. As a solo parent, a child can transform your life. You're going to transform as a person, and you're going to heal and grow. It's going to be the opposite way. It's going to be too much for you, and you could go down two different paths. You could go, you could be in prison, or your kids could get taken off of you if you go down the dark path, if you follow what you saw growing up, if you follow what your parents did. You could be in jail, you could be dead. I'm talking about like addictions, violence, revenge, all those things. But you have a choice to change the whole script for your whole family bloodline. And that's why being a solo parent is so powerful, and you don't know what you're doing. It's the biggest responsibility in this world, and it's the greatest job you'll ever do. So don't minimize it. Don't just think, oh, I'm always stuck at home or with the kids, or I'm just a nobody, no one sees. The most important thing is that God sees you. Doesn't matter what anyone else thinks or does or says. And I just wanted to say, to keep healing, you can't go back over boundaries. You can't. This is what I've done. So I'm just talking to myself as well. Like, think, oh, should I have put that boundary in place? Should I have said that to that person that I only want to meet them here, or I'm only comfortable at the moment on these terms, meeting with this person or talking to this person. And I think you don't have to explain yourself to people. You set the boundary, and you just, if they respect you and they care about you, they'll meet you where you're comfortable and where you're at. Because being a solo parent, you're in a more vulnerable position. People who really love you and care about you, they'll understand that. Especially I don't want to say especially as a woman, like, women are called the weaker vessel in the Bible. So there's differences between a woman and man. A man is more of a protector. A woman is a nurturer, more of a nurturer. But when you have to be both, a man and a woman, when you have to be a father and a mother as a solo mother, when you have to be a mother and a father as a solo father, you have a lot more weight to carry than others and a lot more responsibility. Yeah. Number 3 is guilt tripping from yourself, others, or ex-partner to remain in contact with them when they were toxic, manipulative, or controlling. So have you heard this phrase before? What are you going to tell the children about their parent? So what I want to say to this phrase is that the children that you are raising, they'll find out about their biological parents through your relationship. Your main priority is to look after this child. It's not to worry about what everyone else is doing or saying. You never slander a child's biological parent in front of them. Like, you never say, oh, they were useless, or maybe they were useless, maybe they were a horrible person, but you never say that in front of this child, because what they do is they internalize that. Again, they blame themselves. They think, oh, there's something wrong with me because I came from that and it's my fault and all that stuff again. So that's what you never do. But if they ask you a question, you just tell them the truth at the age appropriate level, and you just keep creating that bond between you two. When they trust you, they'll trust that you want what's best for them. My daughter, she doesn't want to speak to her biological dad. I've asked her. He's asked to call through email because I blocked him everywhere else. But he even popped up again and said, you know how they pop up and pop in, pop back up, these kinds of people. He said, do you want to get married? I'll give you 3 days. Like, that's such a odd thing to say. Like, I haven't spoken to him for years. That's my advice, is like, it's not their fault that God put them here, whether they were born through the horrible tunnel, which is the person, or not, that they came through, they are beautiful and perfect because God created that person, that child that you're raising. So has cutting contact, sometimes you have to cut contact with this person. This is given that they're alive, and it's not, and like, it's voluntary cutting contact. It's not that they're in prison or they passed. It's because you have a child to protect and your own mental and emotional health. So sometimes cutting contact is the only way. And has it brought you more peace, clarity, and strength in yourself? And if it has, then keep sticking to it and don't worry about what other people think or say. Yeah, that's something my daughter's biological dad was good at too, manipulating me, guilt tripping me into thinking like everything was my job to do for him, or it was my fault, like for this or that or whatever. So the solution is strong boundaries are so important for children, especially when you're a solo parent, and keeping those boundaries. They grow stronger, more resilient, and have traits like empathy, maturity, and independence that can even excel other kids their age because of the struggles that you two have overcome together. They've seen and experienced more than other kids their age have. And this is part of self-respect, these boundaries. Protecting your space, keeping your space sacred for you and your children, whether they're DNA-related people or anyone. You may be grieving what your child never had. So you may still be stuck in that fantasy land where I hope that I can get back with the other parent, I hope that they'll be around one day. I hope that they'll help me take care of the children that we helped to create. But that's all a fantasy. Were they ever there? Were they ever helping you with anything? And there's a grief that happens because, like I said, you have to let go of the fantasy. You have to accept reality that they were never around. They were never there for you or the kids. They didn't care. So you have to accept this. It's like a grief process. Because you're actually not healed when you are still stuck in that, I'd like to, maybe get back with the dad. Because honestly, that was me for the first few years of my daughter's life. I went back to India after having my daughter because I thought that we were going to be together, when all the red flags were there and all the signs that he was not a capable provider or husband or mentally stable, emotionally mature man. I got myself into that, and I take full responsibility for the choice that I made to go over there. And yeah, I came to accept reality kind of when I guess when I lost both my grandparents. I started grieving everything together at once. And I realized I'm going to be in this on my own. I realized no, I didn't want to be a solo mother. I had this fear of that's the worst thing that could happen to me. Even as a teenager, I don't want to be a solo mother, because my grandma would be like, you don't want to be a solo mother on the benefit in one of those little moldy houses and a little moldy flat on your own. She used to say that to me, and I was like, you just have this picture stuck in your head of being a poor solo mother. You know what? It can be that, or it can be the most empowering thing. And to me, it's been empowering. I'm not saying aim for being a solo parent in life. Who does that? Yeah, I didn't want to call myself that. I wanted people to think that I wasn't a solo mother. But now I'm like, no, I'm accepting it. I mean, I don't want to limit myself into that, the box of being a solo mother. Because people often think, a solo mother, or solo father, they're below me or whatever. Yeah, no, like I said, God doesn't see you how other people see you. He sees so much more for you than society and all that sees. There's not such a stigma today, but, especially for solo dads, there was such a stigma when I was young even. It was quite more rare. And then solo mothers was a bit less rare, but still. And then if you don't have any family support, any physical family support around you, like myself, you should be real pleased with yourself. You're getting it done. You're out there, creating a better life for you and your child. You're not sitting around complaining or moping. Poor me, I used to do that. But I don't do that anymore. So that's even a massive thing for me. It's all a waste of time. No one's thing that people say, it's God doesn't help those who don't help themselves. That's not even in the Bible. It's actually the opposite. God helps those who can't help themselves. I've been helpless a lot of times in my life, especially as a solo parent. I felt helpless, and I'd pray or call on God, and He'd always help me. When they act funny or they're acting different, if there's open doors somewhere, your kids are more likely to act funny. Open doors to sin, open doors to the demonic realm, and people might not even know. And number 4 is social stigma. So like I was just talking the whole time about stigma. To stigmatize is to mark someone as disgraceful, shameful, or abnormal, which often leads to prejudice, exclusion, or discrimination. It's to brand and label and treat a person or group in a way that shows strong disapproval. And the Merriam-Webster synonyms are label, brand, mark, designate, name, or call. So the prime example we can think of is the Jews wearing the mark of the Star of David, which was a sign of the stigma that they carried. And also being Black in the slavery days in America is another example, because they were treated as less than the European Americans, and the Jews were also treated as less than human. Obviously, we know because of the Holocaust. There's power when a group of people believe something, and it creates strength behind the stigma. So many people believe that Jews and Black Americans were not human or less valuable than other races, and this became a group think belief or stronghold in this culture. And also another example is COVID. Those who didn't get vaccinated, they were stigmatized because they were excluded from public places, many public places. These are times when people were stigmatized in history. And like I said about solo parents, there's a tendency for people to stigmatize you as well. But like I said, your beliefs are so much more important than what all these people are thinking about you. Maybe you grew up with people saying, you always do this or you always fail at that, and that's a parent's voice in your head from childhood, and that can create a stronghold of lies in your mind. That is like a stigma that you're wearing unconsciously. So a stigma in social settings could be like people having prejudices towards you. They might look down on you subconsciously often, and you need to come out of that agreement or just learn to ignore it. Like if people are like that, that's their problem, that's their messed up beliefs. And then you need to speak the truth and know who you are. And a lot of what I believe is what the Bible says, that we're more than conquerors in Romans 8:37. Yeah, sometimes you need prayer support for these word curses that people put on you. Maybe they're parents, maybe they were people around you, but you need to pray against these things. And people like putting you into a box when you're a solo parent where they feel comfortable. But we don't fit into a box. So just wanted to say that you didn't do anything worse than anyone else as a solo parent, even if you went out and fornicated and had a child out of wedlock, which is what I did. It's a sin when you're not married and you sleep together, obviously. The Bible says that we are all born sinners, Romans 3:23. There's different reasons, as I mentioned, but all have fallen short of the glory of God. God turns what the devil intended for evil for our good, and he brings something beautiful out of something ugly, which is the child that you have. Being a parent is the biggest responsibility and honor that we will ever have, and the greatest fulfillment and the biggest motivator in this life. It really causes you to grow and develop as a person. You actually, you'll either go one way or the other, like I said, as a solo parent. You'll either do it really well, or you'll either make a sucky job of it and just pass on everything that you're carrying to your child that is negative. So the Latin word for stigma is physical mark, burned, tattooed onto slaves or criminals or soldiers, which comes from the stigma comes from that word. Sometimes there's a spiritual mark on you, like even as a solo parent, like when you're abused as a child, other demons and people see it in the spirit, and that makes you vulnerable to more abuse. Different types of abuse, the different demons recognize it, whether it's sexual. There's an imprint on you, and it's telling them this person is an available candidate. I just wanted to say I am very pleased and proud of you guys who are solo parents and you're doing it all on your own without any support. It can feel lonely, it can feel dark and isolated. But when you know that you're doing it for a higher purpose, you know you're raising a child for really for God. Like you know that God gave you this child. Yeah, I just wanted to encourage you guys and say that it's time to come out of guilt and just be pleased with all the breakthrough and all the effort that you've made towards building a better life for your child. You're doing so well, and God sees you, and I see you. Thank you guys for listening to this episode. I hope you got something out of it today, and I will speak to you guys in the next episode. Bye for now. And I really appreciate all your support. I could not do this podcast without you. If you'd like to give, you can give on my Give a Little page. And you can also give by subscribing to my Buzzsprout. Just by telling others about this podcast helps me. To any solo parents you know, send this episode to them. Subscribe to my YouTube, my Patreon. The links will be below to everything. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for listening to Voices Unhindered. It's great hearing from my listeners. Reach out with questions and comments through Insta or Facebook. Just search for Voices Unhindered. I'm interested to know what other topics and voices you'd like me to bring on the show. Subscribe to Voices Unhindered on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to never miss an episode.